Hey, what's up, everybody? This is John Gremillion, anime voice actor. You may know me as the voice of Hawkeye Mihawk, swordsman from One Piece, old gentle criminal from My Hero Academia at your service. And you are listening to the Trapped Anime Podcast.
Okay,
Cool.
so have you been watching any good anime lately?
I'm up on My Hero. I watched My Hero. I started binging it a long time ago when I heard about what a good anime it was and how popular it was. And before I auditioned for it, I started binge watching it. So I'm caught up. I'm all caught up on season 6 of the dubs.
Okay, so you seen the latest episode then?
Yes, I have.
That was an awesome episode. For
Oh
those,
man, it's getting pretty crazy in season 6.
Oh yeah.
it had. So how did you get into the voice of Gentle Criminal?
Excuse me. Well, when a few years ago, it was actually 3 years ago. My Hero was in season 3 or 4. No, season 3, I think. And when I heard about what a popular show it was and how so many people, so many characters, and so many interesting voice possibilities, Colleen Klinkenbeard, who plays Momo Yayarosa, and she's also the amazing ADR director for the show, she had directed me a long time ago at Funimation in Black Butler. And I actually played a British guy in Black Butler too, so it's kind of typecasting. It's weird with her. I'd always do a British guy.
Yeah.
But I sent her an email and I said, hey, long time no see. I haven't recorded a lot of stuff at Funimation in a long time, but My Hero sounds amazing and I want to throw my name in the hat. If you think of any characters who you might think I might be good for, shoot me an audition. And she did. That's how it got started.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I auditioned for it. I took a look at the character, the sides of the character, and I saw him with his mustache and his tea, and I said, this guy's got to be British. And so I asked her about it. She said, why don't you audition for British and American at the same time? Send me both of those auditions. And I said, okay. So, and it was such a big show that I actually was the first time I was kind of nervous about an audition. I was kind of pacing the floor after about a week. I hadn't heard anything. I said, man, I hope I get this. It was like waiting for the high school to put up Who Got in the Musical, you know? And then she emailed me one morning, and I was thrilled. I got it. So we recorded 6 episodes. And what's funny is that the first 3 episodes were 3 years ago, right before COVID shut everything down, and we had lockdowns. And the last three episodes I had to record from my closet upstairs.
Oh wow!
Because Funimation shut their studios down, and they had to keep recording. So everybody was recording at their house.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. I bet that was an ordeal.
I think in today's time, it's pretty probably more streamlined that way. Probably made it a lot more easier. You didn't have to go into work and stuff, but you probably have to buy like a lot of equipment.
You bet.
Yeah, get your own studio equipment and stuff like that.
Yeah, like that's what I mean, like by an ordeal, like the setting up, having the space, the room, making sure that the acoustics and sound and everything is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they helped a lot of actors do that who didn't have those setups. They sent them kits in the mail. Funimation really stepped up when COVID hit because they had to shut it down.
That's great for them guys. I'm glad they were able to do that and accommodate everyone in such a great way.
So, did you grow up watching anime, or were you a late bloomer watching anime?
Anime specifically, as we know it today, I was a late bloomer in that I don't watch a lot of actual anime. I've watched a few of the series that I've been in, and some of them just out of interest. But there's so little time in the day. There's so much anime and so little time. When I was growing up, I was a kid of the '70s, and I watched Speed Racer and I watched all the Looney Tunes, the Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff like that. The only anime I watched was anime that you could classify as anime with Speed Racer and things like that. So when I started doing anime voice acting, I wasn't into anime very much. It was the late '90s. So anime was was kind of the nerd sitting in the corner, so to speak, compared to what it is today. It's so much more mainstream and much more popular.
Right.
And ADV Films was the first company that I started working for. And when I heard about their auditions they were having, it was because they were lucky around the late '90s to be doing maybe a couple titles a month. And there were only a couple of anime conventions every month. And they were probably somewhere in a warehouse or a gymnasium or something like that. It wasn't a very big deal.
Right.
And they needed more actors. because they were started to get more licensing to do more shows, and they were taking off. And they started to put out help wanted ads in the paper for, we need actors to do anime voice acting. Okay. And so a lot of Houston actors, I'm a stage kid. You know, I was doing school plays growing up and always been an actor. And so I hadn't done a lot of commercials or corporate video or a lot of voice acting, but that was getting in kind of on the ground floor at ADV. A lot of Houston actors, if you come to Houston and you go see a lot of theater, chances are you're going to see in the programs that a lot of the actors on stage have some anime on their rap sheet, so to speak.
Okay.
So a lot of us got in on that in the late 90s, and then it just started taking off in the 2000s, et cetera, and now here we are today.
Okay, cool. And pretty here nuts. We go.
Trap anime, trap anime, trap anime, trap anime, trap anime, trap anime, the real anime podcast. I lay this trap card face down.
This is the Real Anime Podcast.
We bring trap to the anime, and I am Token Day.
I am Strong Arm.
This is Trap Anime.
And this is Trap Anime.
We always in the trap with anime and rap. My arms stay strong, grabbing tokens while I lap. With Saigon when I snap, Hadoken when I tap. If you looking for some trap anime, then here's your map. We always in the trap with anime and rap. My arms stay strong, grabbing tokens while I lap. With Saigon when I snap, Hadoken when I tap. If you looking for some trap anime, then here's your map. Here's your map, here's your map, here's your map. Well, we gotta wait a little bit because we got this commercial break about to come up, so hold your horses,
bitch. Strong Arm here with another great product, these hands. Got somebody getting on your nerves? Always in your face talking about anime is for kids? Don't you wish you could get rid of them? Well, I have the solution. These hands. With these hands, you will never be bothered again. And the best part is, it's all free, baby. That's right, free. These hands is a great product and rated E for everyone. Or call 1-800-555-HANDS. That's 1-800-555-HANDS to get these hands today.
Welcome to Trap Anime, everyone. My name is Strong Arm.
And I am Mrs. Strong Arm.
And we are here today with a very, very special guest today. His name is John Gremillion. He is the voice of none other than Gentle Criminal from My Hero Academia, and best known as Drake from Hawkeye Mihawk from One Piece. John Gremillion is a stage actor. He's been in film and voice. He's a film and voice actor that's been working in the industry for over 20 years now. He's a native Houstonian, and John has performed in such companies as the Queenberry Theater, the Catastrophic Theater, the Fourth Wall, all kinds of different stuff. And he also does a lot of voice acting for ADV Films, Funimation, Okratron, Central Film Work. Notable credits also include Roland Chappelle from Food Wars, Arthur Randall, and Black Butler, and the list goes on. The man is talented, you guys. So everybody give a round of applause for John.
You're too kind. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
No problem. I had to have you on here because you're part of one of my favorite shows. My favorite show in the world is One Piece right now. Cause
you've got some spare time on your hands.
I wouldn't even say I got spare time. It's one of those things where it just snowballed.
You've got time to watch that show. You've got a little bit of spare time.
It's one of those things that just snowballed. I say matter of fact, I started watching it maybe 5 years ago or so. And,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
I've been recording Mihawk since 2007.
Yeah, we started watching
a long time.
We started watching about maybe 5 years ago, and we binge watched it all the way for about 6 or 7 months, and then finally got to the point to where to where we're caught up now, and we're just official straw hats now.
And I have a
So
growing
you're all
favorite
caught
of,
up. That's fantastic. Well, it's really cool that anime and One Piece specifically, I think, kind of had a little bit of a resurgence during the pandemic. A lot of people were home during the lockdown and said, well, here's a big long anime I can binge watch. And started getting into it. That and a lot of other series, I think.
So what was your first voiceover?
My first voiceover ever, like in any like a commercial or anything else? Gosh, that's a good question. I just did some little commercials for a local club here in town, a nightclub. Needed to do some commercials for, it was like a dance club that people went to. And a friend of mine was a DJ there, and he said, hey man, come to the studio. We're going to do some voices for these commercials. And we just got paid like $50, nothing. I didn't know that voiceover could be a lucrative industry back then, or a good job to have if you're good work if you can get it. I wasn't really into that. It was kind of early 90s, late 80s. Okay. And that was probably the first time that I ever did some professional voiceover work. And then I went to film school and graduated and got my degree in the mid 90s, and I'm a video editor. So I went, took my film school skills and became a video editor. And I've been doing that as long as I've been a voice actor. But then in the late 90s, 98, 99, a lot of Houston actors read the want ads from ADV Films, which is now Sentai, because they were getting more licensing for anime and they needed more actors to do for all these new titles they were doing. They had very few people on their roster to do all these characters they needed to be voiced in titles like Evangelion and Golden Boy and Bubblegum Crisis and Nadesco and things like that. Dirty Pair, they had a lot of stuff going on. So they had a lot of us come up there and audition, and that's how that got started.
So what was your first big major role? What was the role that you landed and you was like, oh yeah, I made it?
I made it with Bubblegum Crisis. That was in 1999, and I played Nigel Kirkland. He was the Bubblegum Crisis 2040 specifically, and he was the mechanic who helped all the four young ladies who were the Night Sabers in that show. They were the crime-fighting crew and taking care of the bad guys, and so I was helping them out. That was my first big role. Then we had Nadesco, where I played a guy named Admiral Munataki. He was kind of a bad guy, kind of a jerk. And started doing some shows like that. What are some other good ones we did back then? Princess Nine, and ADV had a lot of cool titles back then. Excel Saga, and Cromartie High School, and DN Angel, and things like that. We started to do a lot of those shows. Once, but Nigel was my first one. That was my first foot in the door.
Okay, nice. So what character do you enjoy voicing the most?
Probably Gentle Criminal, and it's not just because he's in My Hero, and I'm not just saying that. He really is my favorite character I've voiced probably my whole career. Okay. He's the best. I think that is a really well-written show. It's really deep, and every character, there's so many characters, but they're all very three-dimensional characters, right? And just when you think you've heard everything from them, you see them again. They get a new episode, they get a comeback, they get something else going on, or you can delve into their past. I mean, this show is really well written because there's so many different directions that the writers can go in telling that story, and they're still going strong. It's getting pretty crazy, but he's my favorite character because he's comic relief, but he's actually got a very serious backstory, and he's British, which is great because it's always fun to do a British accent. It's always fun to do accents of any kind at all. I enjoy that a lot. Right. And he's got integrity. I like his character. I like who he is as a person. He's very well written, so I enjoy him a lot.
Okay. How did you get into the mind frame of Gentle Criminal?
Well, that's interesting. When Colleen and I talked about it when I was first doing the role, we talked about who is this guy and what's his whole what's his backstory? What do you think he's like? And I was able to watch the subtitled episodes of the shows before I had to go into the studio to record the English dub. And you don't always get to do that. A long time ago, you didn't do that at all. I would go into ADV and you didn't know what show you were in, you didn't know what character it was, you didn't know anything about the story. You just kind of had to go in cold.
Really?
That happens a lot when you record anime. But these days, when you do simuldubs, and we're trying to release the dub version very close to when the Japanese version comes out, the subtitled version, you can watch them online at home and then go into the studio and record the English dub. So it gives you more preparation work. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
And so that helps get it. Yeah.
Because I was just thinking, because back in the day, the sub would be out for months on end.
Yeah, sure. But if you got a phone call to go in, you usually, unless you went out and got the VHS tape, because it used to be on VHS.
Right.
Unless you went out and got it and watched, you didn't. But right now I can pop my computer up and say, oh, where can I find it? I can find it immediately. So it's a lot easier to do the prep
Streamlined.
work.
Okay, yeah. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay.
Exactly. But what were we just talking about? The
getting into the mind frame.
We talked about him and like, who is this guy? And it was really interesting because he's somebody who has, spoiler alert, but he's got a pretty dark backstory. And you don't know that until you get pretty deep into his arc. At first, he just seems like comic relief. Like, who's this goofy guy? A lot of people were saying, man, who are these YouTube guys, these characters, La Brava and Gentle, who are social media stars who are doing stuff. They're not really hurting anybody. They're not really committing any crimes. What's going on here? And that was in the middle of season 4, right after this really intense arc with Overhaul, etc. And so people were a little confused by that, and some people didn't like it very much. They said, okay, this is filler. It's kind of a waste of time. And I totally disagree, because when we talked about him, if you look deep into him, he's a guy who never was able to make it. He didn't make it as a hero. He kept failing his classes. And so it speaks to a lot of people out there who try to do things and can't achieve their dreams. We all have times in our lives where we kind of fall down and have to try again and pick ourselves up, right?
Right.
So he was a very relatable character. And then we decided, well, he failed, and then when he tried to save someone, and someone got very badly injured, and society was all of Japan was angry at him. It was a big scandal. And when he needed people the most, everybody turned on him, and even his family kicked him out. So he had no one. He was rejected by everyone. And instead of becoming where most people would just be filled with rage and then become villains and be angry and never get over their anger, he was never able to be a bad person. Even when he became a villain, he decided, I can't be a bad person. He's too good a man deep down, which is really, I think, is pretty fascinating. Right. And what I also think is really fascinating about him is that I don't think it's an accident that he's on social media, on YouTube, trying to be a different person. Because how many people do you know who try to use social media to kind of boost their standing and get likes and, cause drama? Or, there's a lot of stuff that goes on social media that a lot of it's cool, but some of it isn't cool. Some of it's kind of unhealthy. It's like, I need to be someone else in order to be somebody. I can't be myself. You know what I mean? I got to be somebody else. I got to be a persona. So he's this whole persona of a British gentleman, when that's not really who he is at all. He's trying to be somebody else because he doesn't think he can succeed in life as himself. There's too much pain there. And that's really pretty deep. So he's such a fully fleshed out character. And that makes him very interesting to play. So Colleen and I talked about all of that stuff when we were in the studio, about who he really is deep down and who he's pretending to be, right? So I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed that process because that was deeper acting work for me, deeper work as an actor and not just as a voice actor. But of course, any voice actor will tell you that it's not really about the voice; it's more about the acting. So the better a show's written, the deeper you can go and the better your performance will be.
And I can really feel your emotion into the character too when I watched it too, because we watched it the other day and I was like, he has a really emotional state towards what's the other character name? La Brava. Yeah, and
big time.
And then like you really put the emotion into your acting and the voicing of his character, and it really brought it out very well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, but I love playing him, and La Brava is somebody who she was the first person to kind of accept him and say, I'm going to help you out. I've got your back. And so that's why they have such a good, and he helped her as well. She was at the end of her rope. And she said, hey, this is somebody that I can relate to and who can maybe help me out. So I think they have a good, it's a very interesting partnership they have.
Yeah. Your work in Food Wars as the chef Ronald Chappelle. Ronald Chappelle. How did that come about?
I love Food Wars.
That became about because I'm French Cajun and I do accents, and my whole extended family's from Louisiana, so we're all French Cajun. And so Kyle Jones, the director, knew that I could do a French accent, and that's pretty much what landed me the role. So he said, "Come on in and be a French guy." I'm like, "Great, let's do it." So we fired it up, and that's a super fun show.
Yeah.
I wish he hung around more. He was only in like season 1. He showed up a little bit in season 2.
Right.
But he's like the French Gordon Ramsay. So I said, this is going to be fun, and I enjoyed doing him a lot.
Yeah, I thought that show was very interesting to me. It was one of those shows where it was like, oh, I can't have the kids up while I'm watching this, but at the same time, it was very interesting because I love to cook. So watching So watching Food Wars was just something that was very lovely.
Have you made any of the recipes in the show? Because they're all real.
I thought about it, but some of them were so...
They're intricate. They're real.
They're
so it's like, are you ready?
Yes, they are. They definitely are. They're delicious.
Have you ever tried one of them?
That's the other thing about it is I don't cook. I'm embarrassed to say I'm not a good cook.
Okay.
I wish I was, but... So the French part was real, but not the cooking part.
Well, we all have our talents.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. So Draco Mihawk.
Yes, sir.
That character. How did that character come about?
Well, that was really fun because, like I said, in 2007, that was the first time I got the call from Mike McFarland at Funimation, which is now Crunchyroll.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, who's still working there, he's the guy that I met from Funimation. When I heard about Funimation, I had not worked for them before, but a lot of ADV actors were talking about there's another studio in Fort Worth called Funimation, and they're doing some really cool titles. And so I wanted to get in there and talk to somebody. So somebody said, somebody introduced me to Mike. And then he got me a couple of, he had me audition for him over the phone. After I sent him a demo reel, I edited together a reel of stuff I've done at ADV, and he said, okay, well, you've got some range. Let's audition you for a role. I was in a show called Galaxy Railways, and I did a show called Basilisk and Trinity Blood. And One Piece came along somewhere around that time. In 2007, a couple of years after I met Mike, he just called me, and I did an audition for Mihawk. He just said, come on in and read for this guy. I want to give you this role. So other studios had done One Piece. The Funimation's not the only studio. I think 4Kids, if I'm correct,
right,
did it as well.
Correct.
Did it One Piece. So I think there was one studio, I think there's maybe 2 studios other than Funimation that did One Piece, or have done a version of it. And Mihawk was a Frenchman in one of them, and I said, no, he's not. And I didn't want to make him a Spaniard necessarily, like a Nico Montoya from Princess Bride or anything like that. So I said, what voice can I give this guy? And I thought about it in the studio, and I'd just seen a Harry Potter movie. And I thought about Alan Rickman, because Alan Rickman as Snape he's like a snake. He's so sly, and he's talking like that. I can't do an imitation of him, but I just started talking like that. And then I took away the British, and then I kept it kind of more in my nose, and kept it very sly, like he's a snake, kind of above it all, and very confident, and that became Mihawk's voice. Okay. So I said, how about that? He said, great, no problem. So we went with that. So I thought it worked.
Nice.
Yeah.
So was it difficult getting there?
No, not really. We just tried a couple things with it, and then I just decided that when I saw his face, I just saw he's always such a confident guy. He's overly confident. Like
very.
He shows up every 18 months or so and goes, "Hello, I'm a badass. Goodbye." And, takes off, beats everybody. So I said, he's got to have some kind of he's very over it. Nothing really bothers him. So with that in mind, that voice just kind of worked for him. I just, he sits back and looks at the world and goes, oh yes, what a bother, And so I like that about him, and I love playing that part of that. I love playing the character that way. He doesn't raise his voice very often. He doesn't have to. It's all in his power. So that's a good thing about being a voice actor, is that you don't have to be anything like those characters. You don't have to look like them. I mean, I can't look like Mihawk if I tried. And
right.
If he handed me his sword, I'd probably fall over and break my back. So it's very, you just got to show up and add the voice to it, which is a really, really fun part of Mihawk's a great example of how much fun it is to be a voice actor, because you can just provide one layer of the character, being the voice, and the rest of it is kind of done for you in all the animation. And that's part of the fun of it, is because you can just get into a role that is a complete fantasy, completely different from who you are as a person, and just enjoy it. It's kind of like, it's like playing pretend.
Yeah.
It's like you're a kid again, right, in the studio. And that role is a great example of that.
Okay, kind of like when you're you're reading to the kids for bedtime story. You make the voices and stuff like that.
That's exactly
kind of
right.
like that.
That's exactly right.
So growing up, did you do a lot of imitation and impersonations of?
Yes. I was the kid, and I was a class clown doing impressions, and I was doing impersonating either people on TV or at school. I would get in trouble because I could imitate the teacher, or I could imitate the faculty at my school.
Yeah. So
hopefully they never, I hope they never found out about it. A couple of them did get in trouble because they want to hear their voice, and you're like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So yes, I did a lot of that. I was kind of known for that. Or if I was in the school play, I was the British guy or the Irish guy or the, somebody with an accent. They would pull me in. I did a lot of that. And I did a lot of sketch comedy with my friends, and I liked Monty Python growing up, and I was big into all the sketch comedy and on Saturday Night Live. I mean, I was a big nerd for all that stuff, definitely, and it helped me a lot in not just as I said, it's more about the acting than about the voice. Everybody who talks to me about, or other voice actors about, how do you become a voice actor and how do you get into it? A lot of people want to try voice acting. They think it would be a lot of fun and a real adventure. And I say, well, it's all about acting. And some people don't want to hear that, because they just want to be able to do voices and just have a good time. But you've really got to go into the studio having some good acting skills and some good improvisation skills, because when you do a stage play, you are meeting the cast, and you meet the director, and you all get the script, and you get to know the show really well, and you do table reads, and then you do rehearsals for weeks, and then you perform it. And if you don't do well on Friday night, you can get it better on Saturday night. You keep shaping it, forming it as you do a play. And you've got an audience the whole time. You get a reaction from the audience, and there's this energy in the room. When you go into an anime recording booth, you're by yourself. You're not with any of the other actors. And you do the line. You have to match the lip flaps while you watch the animation, while you're also reading the script on the that you haven't memorized. So you're looking at lines that you haven't memorized, that you're looking at for the first time, and saying them with emotion while you're matching lip flaps and trying to make it real.
Right.
So you're juggling a lot of different stuff at the same time, and it's not like anything like real life interaction or being on stage. So the more you are able to improvise, and the more confident you are as an actor, the less you have to worry about, and the less you have to juggle on the fly, and you can just focus on what is going to make that work for you, if that makes any sense. So I always tell people, if you want to be a voice actor, especially if you want to do anime, take acting classes, take improvisation classes, do as much as you can to get your creative juices flowing, so that you can pull something. You've got a big bag of tricks, right? You can always say, hey, I can try this, I can try that. The more experience you have with it, the better are you with it, the better you are at it, of course.
Okay.
So I think that's what I always try to encourage people, is to do more acting.
Okay.
And the voice is kind of the icing on the cake.
Right. Okay. If you could be on any other anime show right now, what would it be?
Gosh, Trigun I hear is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, the latest Trigun.
They're getting Trigun back on the air. Let's see. Right now, what am I doing right now? There's a show on Crunchyroll called Buddy Daddies, and I'm casting that show right now, which is I'm playing a bad guy, one of the baddies with a gun. And let's see, we just started doing a show called Reincarnated as a Sword at Sentai, and I get to do a Scottish accent, which is great because I haven't done it. Yeah, I've done maybe one of them in 25 years.
You said Reincarnated as a Sword?
That's Reincarnated as a Sword.
What is that about?
It's like a fantasy. It's a fantasy show. This guy passes away. He comes back as a sword, and he's the sword of a young girl who's got a lot of badass talent and taking on the bad guys in this fantasy world. And so I'm like Gimli in Lord of the Rings. I'm a short, bearded warrior guy with a Scottish accent. Yeah. He didn't have a Scottish accent until we went in there. I said, let's make him Scottish. I'll have more fun. Nice. But there's a show. Let's see. Well, Attack on Titan would have been really cool. I'm not in that show. I played a very small role in one of the episodes of Attack on Titan, but that was it. But that would be an intense show to do. Yeah. I don't know what's coming up. A couple things I can't talk about because we haven't nailed them down yet. Mm-hmm. But those shows are really. I think Trigun would be a lot of fun.
I think it would be too.
And if they bring me back in My Hero, I'm all over it.
So you're from Houston, right?
Yep, born and raised. I was born in Pasadena and grew up in the surrounding areas and in Houston all my life. And I'm still here. I went to college everywhere else. I went to study acting in New York, and then I went to film school in Austin. And Houston was where family was and where the work was, and it's where the anime turned out to be too. So I stuck around.
That's cool. My family's from LaPorte.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my parents live about 3 miles away, so it's not bad.
Yeah. We actually went to school at Texas Southern in Houston, so that's how
very nice.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
At TSU?
Yeah, at TSU.
Oh, very nice.
Third Ward, Houston, Texas.
Cool.
But yeah, so when it comes to getting the voice right, how does that work?
Well, it depends on the show. It just depends on the show and on the moment. There have been sometimes the director knows exactly what they want to hear, and sometimes they want to match as best they can the mood of what the Japanese actor did, and sometimes they want to give you a little more freedom with it. So Mihawk, like I said, was a very different kind of a thing. We just tried some stuff with it until we liked it. Gentle was obvious because I was going to make him British, so it's just a very sophisticated, classy British guy. Mm-hmm. So that was easy. I've had other times where I go into the studio and the first thing I do is I always listen to the Japanese actor because that's who they originally cast in Japan, and they did that for a reason. So usually you want to try to honor that if you can.
Right.
But some of the directors want to go a little bit differently. They want to say, okay, try to give it your own flavor, because you have to. If you just do an imitation, it may not sound as real coming out of you, because if you have to stick to, well, this doesn't really sound like me, this wouldn't naturally come out of me. If I'm saying these lines, then you might want to take it a little differently. You might want to relax it a little bit and just stick with more. Let the voice come out of you more naturally. Usually you're cast, most of the time you're cast because they know how your voice naturally sounds, and they think it's going to, like, I've got a deeper voice, I've got a baritone voice. So I don't really play the young teenager who's going to, help save the world. I'm usually the cop or the dad or the cop's dad or the, I've played a lot of characters who run the evil corporation or the politician or somebody who's like evil. Yeah. So they usually think of me, the directors usually think of me when they think of those deeper voice guys. So when I go into the studio, if the director knows me, he's not going to put me in something that's going to be such a stretch for my voice that it's not going to sound very natural, and it's not going to work for the character. And the directors are pretty. I don't envy the directors because they know so many actors these days, and there's so many different characters to fill.
Right.
And it's such work to fill them correctly that they have to kind of go, okay, look, who are our deep voice guys? Well, there's John, there's this guy, and so you don't normally get cast in roles that are drastically different from the timbre and the vibe of your own voice. You know what I mean?
So most of the time, would you say that they have like their own circle of people that they pull from all the time?
Right. Usually, yes.
Okay. So it's more of like you kind of in order to get in there, you kind of got to get in that circle.
Well, not really. Yes and no. I mean, it doesn't hurt. I don't want to say that across the board because number one, I don't work there. I don't work in that capacity at the studio, so I don't know. But I'm not really qualified to answer that. But I know that some of it has to do with certainly the more work you've done, the more familiar you are with the directors, and if they know who you are, then the more likely it is that you'll get more roles down the line, especially if you've done a good job. You also have to do a good job and be good to work with, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
But that circle keeps expanding. I mean, the more popular anime gets, and the more people are into it, the more shows get written, the more characters there are. It never hurts to have a bigger and bigger pool of talent to pull from.
Right.
And I think that the pandemic did a lot to do with that, because also it opened up new opportunities to cast people who could do remote recording, and they don't necessarily have to live in the state of Texas.
Right.
Even though about 60% of dubs happen in Texas.
Right.
So people from California and New York and Chicago and different places can certainly get their foot in the door as well. But I think absolutely over the years, the talent circle has expanded for sure. And you never know. Sometimes directors go to see plays, and I know a couple of directors at Sentai have gone to see some plays, and they hear somebody's voice and they've never met them before, and they go, wow, they've got a really interesting voice. Let's audition them. Okay. I'm sure they get submissions all the time of different voiceover demo reels from people on through email and et cetera. And sometimes they hear demos that they like and they pull those people in. So it kind of runs the gamut. It's not necessarily just one circle of people. It's certainly there's other opportunities, but you never know how it works. You never know how it's gonna. There's no one answer to how do you become a voice actor or get into the business, because different people have done it in several different kinds of ways.
Okay. So let's see. One more question. So when it comes to dubbing, do you guys sometimes have to like change the words in order for it to match the lips, or to make it make more sense in English?
Yeah, definitely. You definitely run into a situation where sometimes I've done scripts that are so beautifully translated, and the translator did such a good job of watching all the lip flaps and making sure, counting the syllables, making sure it worked, that we don't have to rewrite anything. And there's been some scripts where we definitely had to rewrite them no matter what, because occasionally there's a line that just doesn't work, or it ends up opening on a vowel sound and they can't end on a consonant, and you've got to try some tricks and rewrite it. And there's even been times where something gets completely rewritten. I was once at the studio early in the morning, and we had to record something, and I did a voice for it, and the director says, no, I don't like this. And he went outside, smoked a cigarette, came back in, and he rewrote the whole thing. And he just rewrote the entire. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but occasionally that happens. Like if you've ever heard of the show Ghost Stories, Ghost Stories is pretty infamous for being totally rewritten, and it's like a parody of the original anime.
Yeah. I think I have heard of that. Yes, because there's like nothing like is the same at all.
Exactly. So, and that's not a common thing at all. But sometimes, you have to be a little creative, and you have to rewrite some lines to make something fit and make it work. And sometimes we've tried a few times in a row. You just got to get it right. But yeah, that happens.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Right. Because you kind of hope that they try to stick to the original sub, but I guess sometimes you got to change the words and certain things.
Or it may not. When you translate Japanese directly to English, sometimes it ends up being a lot longer than it needs to be, and we may not there's idiomatic things too. It's like you don't necessarily say the same words, or if you use certain phrases or certain terms, the cultures are different to where you need to just kind of adapt it in a way to something more American when you do the dub, that we are going to understand a little bit better culturally than, you may understand the words, but they're being used in ways that you don't understand as well. Mm-hmm. So so translators have their work cut out for it.
Yeah, because I have noticed sometimes, like for instance, in One Piece, the actor for Kinemon in the sub, his voice is very deep and more serious and whatnot. But then in the dubbed, he's like a lot more upbeat. Like, yes, sir, I am Kinemon, and I'm it's a little bit more. A little more proper.
He's more high pitched and upbeat than the serious Japanese guy.
Right, and I was like, that's weird.
It's that difference.
Yeah, but again, you may get an actor in there who he has a different energy than as an actor than the Japanese actor did, and so you don't have to be completely strict to matching it, but you start that as a base, and depending on the director and depending on the show and depending on the scene, they can just decide, let's go a slightly different direction with this. You've got a little bit of a freedom to do that. Just like in movies, when you remake a movie or you have different actors do certain roles in plays,
right.
There's nothing about the character. You have to stick to certain things about the character and their personality and their motivation, but the way they talk and the way they present themselves can be somewhat, you've got a range to kind of work and play with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's real interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what time. Okay, looks like we're about making time. So let's go ahead and give everybody your social media so that way they can go and follow you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I've got a website called johngremillion.com, and you can look there to see just some of my work. You can check out and see which convention appearances I'll be making. I keep that pretty up to date. Mm-hmm. On Instagram, I'm just at John Gremillion. I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I've got TikTok, which is JGremVA for voice actor, just JGremVA. Those are the big ones. I'm also on Cameo if people ever want to. Oh, by the way, on my website, there's a store where if you don't see me at a convention and you want to get a print, you want to get a signed print, I will custom sign at a store on my website. You can click on a print. You can pick which one you want. I can sign it for you and mail it to you directly. A lot of people do that. There's always Cameo. And let's see what I'll look it up right here because I forgot at the moment exactly who I'm called on Cameo. But if you go by my name, I'm going to type it in. What is that one? Just look up John Gremillion on just my full name on Cameo, and I do some Cameo for people, and that's about it. Those are my needs.
Okay, great. And also, guys, don't forget to follow Trap Anime at Trap Anime Podcast on Instagram, also on YouTube and Facebook. And next convention we will be at WeebCon. So
cool.
That will be in April
7th.
April 7th. So don't forget to get your tickets, guys. It's gonna be a lot more voice actors lined up. I wish you could be there. That would be awesome.
WeebCon is not on my calendar. I'm gonna be. Let's see, where am I in April? I'm a few places in April, but I think I'm going to. I think that's the one weekend I might have off in April. But I'm going to Bold City Con and Anime Town, Utah, and Triad Con in April. I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
But WeebCon, one of these days will be at WeebCon.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have you there because the voice of Shanks and the voice of Zoro is going to be there. So it'd been like to have all three out there. You got to have that would have been some signatures right there.
They've got a lot of cool people showing up there. Yeah, Kyle Aber's going to be there. Brian Drummond, Kellen Goff. Bryce Pappenbrook, Sean Schemmel. They got a bunch of people who are going to be there.
It's usually pretty. The lineup's pretty big. For the most
it's
part.
pretty intense. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I want to thank you once again for being on the podcast, and we do appreciate you, man.
It was a great pleasure speaking with you.
My pleasure.
All right,
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you again. All right, guys, and we are out of here.
Bye.